Hey there, it's Miss Cromer, and I am going to give you a brief introduction on Of Mice and Men. We're reading it in Unit 7. We're writing a book report on it in Unit 8, so it's really important that we set the scene and kind of prepare you for what's to come. So in Of Mice and Men, our setting is the 1930s, so Great Depression era. And we've got these two men, older boys, and they are looking for work. And times are hard for everybody, right? The farm owners, the farm hands, everybody's struggling, and that's where we're set at. That's where our story takes place. I'm not going to give too much away because I know nobody has started reading it yet, and I don't want to give anything away. But I do want to help set your expectations. I want to explain some things before we get too deep into it. So, every year we get a few pages in, and I've got students webmailing me, Ms. Cromer, why are we reading this? Do I have to read this? Are you sure? And my response is always very similar in that this is historically relevant. This is important. We can't gloss over this because the story makes us feel uncomfy. Okay. And I'll explain more of that in a second. But this story being set in Great Depression era, times are hard. We see a lot of the historical and social issues, right? So we're getting a window into what it was really like to live during the Great Depression, what it was really like to just be alive. And that comes with its own set of nuances, right? So I'm going to talk about the language in a minute. That's probably the most blatant as you start reading. But some of the other things that we're going to look at is the idea of human dignity, the idea of friendship and loneliness, and how those can coexist. We're going to look at some social issues that were going on in the 1930s. For example, prejudice is probably the most prevalent. Okay. And then we are going to look at all of these things, okay, all of these themes, and we are going to be able to analyze this piece of literature, because that's what it is, through a lens of, I see a typo on my screen, through the lens of empathy and critical thinking, okay? And that will make a little more sense after I circle back, okay? So put a pin in that. Why is the language in this novel needed? Why is it there, and why do I have to read it? Okay, is a question that a lot of students ask. And just to kind of, I don't want to over prepare you. You hear worse on the street, honestly, probably, but it serves a purpose in this story. Okay, so we are going to look at, as an example, this word is used a few times, but we are going to talk about the N word. Okay, it makes us feel uncomfortable. It makes me feel uncomfortable to read it, to hear it, to see it, and as I'm sure it does for you. And that's a good thing. Okay, it's a good thing that it makes us uncomfortable to hear and see and read that word. Okay, that means that we are evolving as a society in the right direction. Okay. Unfortunately, in the 1930s, prior to, right after that, leading up to, and even after the abolishment of slavery, the N-word was common jargon. It was the common tongue. It was no different than me saying bro or dude. Okay. And that's super unfortunate, but it is true. The fact that whites and blacks are and should be equal in everyone's eyes is evolvement as a society in the right direction. Okay. It was not that way. Even after the abolishment of slavery, people were still coming out of this white people owned black people mentality. And that whole idea is uncomfortable, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen. And it doesn't mean we can gloss over it, right? Because if we do that, then we risk history repeating itself. Maybe the tables will turn. Maybe it'll be a different race. It doesn't matter. It could repeat itself if we avoid talking about the uncomfortable reality of history, right? So For the same reason, if we censor historical fiction, historical nonfiction, and we take out the words that make us feel uncomfortable, because now we rightfully know that they are not appropriate, right? They are not, it's not okay to be prejudiced in that way or to say words with that weight, right? And that's a great thing, like I said before. But if we censor history, we risk repeating itself, right? We risk that the history could repeat itself because we won't have learned from history, because we're pretending that part of history didn't happen so that we don't feel uncomfortable. Okay, so that is the long of the short way of saying that words have impact. I am not glossing over that. Yes, it will make you feel uncomfortable. It will. It makes me feel uncomfortable. And I've read this book multiple times. Okay. And the N word is not the only word they use that has this historical use where it was common tongue. It was jargon of that time period. You can probably think of a similar B word referring to women, and it's the exact same thing. Okay. It is the exact same thing. There's prejudice, there's a power dynamic, and there is an evolution of what's acceptable, thank goodness. And we're on the other side of that, but that doesn't mean that there was the wrong side of it, that there wasn't the wrong side of it, right? A long time ago. So we can't censor, we can't pretend it didn't happen, because then we could risk repeating history, right? So there are words in this story that will make you feel uncomfortable, but they serve a purpose. The author wrote this so that you would get a window into history. You would see and read and hear and feel what was normal in the 1930s. And that is a very accurate portrayal of history in this era. So words have impact, words have weight, words have power, and prejudice is unacceptable, right? And thank goodness we know that now. Thank goodness, because they did not know that. They did not understand the weight of what was happening in the words they were using. So yes, the language in this story is not comfortable. It is not every other word. It is not something to write home about, really, but there are words that are going to make you feel uncomfy. And that's okay, because how else will we protect our society from not repeating history? So hopefully that helps prepare your mind a little bit better, specifically around language. And then this idea of empathy and critical thinking that I want to circle back to in my last 60 seconds here is that the story overall, beyond just the words, is a little bit heavy, okay? In a way that's going to force you to think critically. It's going to force you to empathize with the characters, because the author does a really masterful job at, like I said, putting you in their shoes, putting you in their perspective, their point of view, and the impact of words and setting the scene. It just all plays a role. You're going to be able to empathize with this situation in a way that you would not be able to empathize if I had just told you a story about a friend of a friend without any context of timing or prejudice or anything like that. If I just told you a story about a friend of a friend, and that friend did something to their friend, really, that was just mind-blowing, you would not be able to empathize with that. But because we are reading the story from beginning to end, the author does a really good job at putting you in the story, helping you see all angles of this situation that we're going to talk about. You're going to be able to empathize in a really in a powerful way that you wouldn't be able to think that you could empathize. So I'm hoping that makes sense. It's cryptic because I don't want to give anything away. But you're going to be forced to think critically and to empathize with this key concept that happens. And it slowly unfolds through the whole story, but it doesn't culminate until the last page. And so you're going to be sitting there thinking after you finish reading. This story shouldn't take you more than an hour or two to read, so it's not this huge time commitment, but it is really important. You're going to be tested on it in Unit 7. throughout quick checks and live lesson conversations. And then you're writing a book report on symbolism within the story. So kind of as you're reading, be thinking about the symbols that you're seeing. And be sure to reach out to your course teacher if you have any questions.